German soldiers expected darkness when they reached America. Instead, they saw a nation glowing with lights, power, food, cars, factories, and their ideology collapsed instantly. June 4th, 1943, a quiet evening in Mexia, Texas. The streets were calm, the sky dark, and yet the town glowed like a constellation of stars scattered across the earth. Streetlights burned bright. Homes were lit warmly from within. Shops glimmered with electric signs and bright windows even late into the night. To Americans, this sight was ordinary. To the German prisoners arriving by train, it was nothing short of unbelievable. Inside one of the train cars, a German soldier secretly held a pencil in his trembling hand. His name was Unteroffizier Vera Burkhardt, and he was writing in a diary he was never meant to have. If his officers had discovered it, he could have faced severe punishment. But he needed to write, because what he had just witnessed shattered everything he had been told for years. The Americans must be lying, he wrote silently. No country could live like this during a war. For 3 years, Nazi propaganda had painted America as weak, chaotic, broken, and on the verge of collapse. Germany had lived in blackout darkness. Entire cities were ordered dark at night to hide from bombers. Even before the war, millions of German farms had never received electricity. Meanwhile, here, in a land they were trained to hate, power flowed freely, endlessly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Outside, 850 veterans of the Afrika Korps stepped off the train. These were not inexperienced recruits. They were hardened desert fighters, men who had faced brutal heat, British armor, and endless battles. Yet what they stepped into was not a prison cattle car, not a brutal detention compound, not the nightmare they had expected. They had traveled in Pullman passenger coaches with cushioned seating, clean sleeping compartments, and dining service. They were shocked before they even touched American soil. The people of Mexia, Texas, didn't come to mock them. They didn't come to threaten them. The entire town simply gathered to watch, because for them, this was history unfolding before their eyes. Thousands of enemy soldiers arriving peacefully in the heart of America. No one standing there knew that this moment marked the beginning of one of the greatest psychological transformations in modern history. These prisoners were about to witness something more powerful than any weapon. Proof of American industrial strength, displayed not on battlefields but in everyday life. The collapse of Nazi belief systems did not begin with speeches. It began with numbers, machines, electricity, transport, food, medicine, and scale so vast that it shattered every lie they had grown up believing. North Africa, where the fall began. The downfall started weeks earlier, far across the ocean. May 13, 1943, Tunisia. General Jürgen von Arnim, the successor to Rommel, surrendered. Between 250,000 to 275,000, German and Italian troops laid down their arms. It was one of the largest mass surrenders in history. These were elite soldiers, men who had fought the British to the edges of Egypt, men who had earned respect from their enemies, now prisoners of war. Among them was Heinemann Friedrich Radke, holder of the Iron Cross First Class, wounded twice in Africa, veteran of France and desert battles. His diary would later become one of the most important historical documents ever discovered, describing how captivity in America reshaped the minds of German soldiers. Their journey began in Oran, Algeria. Here, tens of thousands of prisoners waited inside temporary, holding camps before being shipped across the Atlantic. Many expected brutal treatment. They expected starvation. They expected humiliation. They were wrong. The first shock, American organization. The United States processed thousands of prisoners every single day with efficiency and precision, unlike anything the Wehrmacht had ever achieved. Photographs were taken, identity records documented, full medical exams performed, vaccinations administered, all with speed and structure. Not only that, officers greeted them in fluent German and explained their rights under the Geneva Convention. Most prisoners stared in disbelief. Then came the food. German soldiers who had survived months of desert. Starvation suddenly found themselves eating white bread, real coffee, meat twice a day, fresh vegetables consistently. Many believed this was psychological trickery. Surely, this couldn't be the normal diet of American soldiers. But it was, and this was only the beginning. Crossing the Atlantic. Another reality check. They were loaded onto Liberty ships, powerful cargo. Vessels built at a pace no German factory could ever match. One famous ship had been constructed in just over 4 days. Americans were producing these giants faster than bombs could sink them. On board, another shock awaited. German soldiers saw American sailors casually throw away leftover steaks, bread and milk because it was extra. Waste meant nothing, not because Americans were arrogant, but because their supply was endless. Prisoners stood stunned. They had been fighting in Africa, counting every grain of rice. America was discarding more food in a day than some German units received in a week. The coast of the United States. August 2nd, 1943, Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia. As the ships approached, German POWs saw something breathtaking. Cranes, docks, warehouses, cargo ships stretching farther than their eyes could see. One single American port handled more cargo in one day than major German ports could handle in a week. They marched past parking lots full of civilian automobiles. In Germany, cars were luxuries for elites. In America, dock workers, ordinary laborers, drove to work daily. Then came the train journey into the heart of the United States, a journey that would permanently destroy Nazi propaganda inside their minds. They didn't ride in cattle cars. They didn't stand packed like livestock. They sat in comfortable Pullman coaches, with padded seats, sleeping bunks, dining cars, air-cooled interiors, and respectful guards. They received apologies if air conditioning wasn't perfect. Prisoners looked at each other in stunned silence. "We are being treated like tourists," one wrote. "Not like prisoners." The train ride. Witnessing a different world. For 3 days, German POWs stared out of train windows, witnessing something their government swore did not exist. Towns burning with electricity, shops filled with goods, factories working day and night, workers dressed well, eating comfortably, huge cars everywhere, homes with multiple electric lights, refrigerators, radios, fans, signs, movement, power. This was not a collapsing country. This was a country overflowing with life. Germany had darkness. America had light. Germany rationed bread. America threw food away. Germany built slowly. America built endlessly. The psychological transformation had begun. As the trains rumbled deeper into the United States, the German prisoners saw a new kind of power, one that no battlefield could ever teach them. Fields stretched to the horizon. Machines moved with precision beyond comprehension. And factories churned out products faster than any European industry could dream. In Tennessee, the Alcoa aluminum plant spanned miles along the river, its electric furnaces consuming power greater than entire German cities. Every night, molten metal glowed like rivers of fire, feeding the machines that supplied airplanes, bombs, and weapons for the Allied war effort. The prisoners stared in disbelief. Near Louisville, they passed the Rubber Town Industrial Complex, a collection of synthetic rubber plants that had risen from empty farmland in under 2 years. 4 massive facilities produced 800,000 tons of rubber annually, a feat German industry had never managed, even though they had invented the process. German chemist Oberleutnant Erich Hoffmann wrote in later interviews, "I knew these processes. I had worked with distillation columns and catalytic crackers. What I saw there was light years beyond anything we had built in Germany. And there were dozens more such plants. Dozens." The train then rolled past Willow Run, Michigan, a factory built in 9 months that could produce a B-24 Liberator bomber every hour. 42,000 workers, assembled planes from over 1.5 million parts, sourced from over 2,500 subcontractors. The plant covered 2.5 million square feet and consumed more electricity than Cologne, one of Germany's largest cities. Luftwaffe pilot Houtman Verli, who had survived Tunisia, pressed his face to the window. 17 bombers in various stages of assembly stretched as far as he could see. "We were told American planes were cheap and fragile," he recorded later. "We were wrong. They were faster, yes, but flawless. Precision in quantity, unimaginable. Bridges, rivers, and grain." In St. Louis, the train crossed the Mississippi River on the Eads Bridge. Below, barges carried more grain than Germany had harvested. In 1942, gigantic elevators lined both banks, storing enough wheat to feed entire cities for months. Unreitzia Karl Schmidt, a Bavarian farmer's son, wrote, "The Americans move food as if ammunition. I watched a single barge being loaded, with enough wheat to feed my entire village for 5 years. And the man operating the crane ate a sandwich. Meat thicker than our weekly rations while he worked." Kansas City offered another revelation. The prisoners arrived at massive stockyards, where tens of thousands of cattle awaited slaughter. The smell of meat, smoke, and bustling industry filled the air. German POWs who had survived on 200 grams of meat per week in North Africa watched American workers casually enjoy sandwiches with beef, cheese, and vegetables, as if it were nothing remarkable. One guard even bought hamburgers for a group of prisoners, paying with $1 for 20 sandwiches, without thought. This was not luxury. This was normal. Camp Hearn, luxury prison life. The next stop was Camp Hearn, Texas. Built in just 4 months, it housed between 3,000 and 4,800 prisoners, with facilities that dwarfed what most German civilians had known. Barracks were wooden, well-lit, heated, with hot showers and flush toilets. Hospitals inside the camp outshone many German civilian hospitals. Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Friedrich Bauer, chief surgeon of the 164th Light Division, marveled at the equipment. X-ray machines, surgical instruments, and penicillin freely available. A drug German soldiers had only heard about in rumors. The kitchen became another classroom. Prisoners assigned to cooking duties saw walk-in refrigerators, electric mixers, automated dishwashers, and industrial stoves capable of preparing meals for 5,000 men. Rations included fresh milk, eggs, meat, vegetables, and white bread, items that German civilians had not seen since 1939. Otto Krebs, a former hotel chef, wrote, "Today, we threw away more food than my family had seen in 3 years. Not spoiled food, simply surplus. Americans prepare 10% extra to guarantee every prisoner receives full rations. I cried as I tossed perfectly good bread. Working the land, witnessing American agriculture." By September 1943, the American labor shortage led to prisoners being employed in farms and factories. The impact was profound. Unlike in Germany, where work was often grueling and scarce, these soldiers saw machines performing the work of dozens of men with ease. At a cotton gin near Houston, Herbert Lang observed a single machine process in 1 hour what his entire village could not manage in a month. Powered by electricity from the Colorado River Authority, it represented the success of America's rural electrification program, which by 1943 reached 90% of Texas farms. The farmers themselves were ordinary people, not aristocrats, not Nazi officials, yet they had electricity, running water, tractors, trucks, and cars. Even the laborers, including black workers, ate meals far surpassing what German civilians could access in a week. In Nebraska, prisoners worked in sugar beet fields, witnessing machines harvesting crops at a speed that dwarfed human effort. A single combine could replace the work of 100 men. The land stretched endlessly, producing yields like 60 bushels per acre, impossible in Germany. Wilhelm Hoffmann, working near Scottsbluff, recalled, "The farmer's son, only 16, drove a tractor worth more than my father had earned in his entire life. And the boy laughed, saying it wasn't even the best tractor. They were waiting on a new model from John Deere." Factories, a revelation of industrial might. Prisoners were allowed to observe industries that freed American workers for war production. They saw the inner workings of factories, with automation and scale beyond imagination. At a Campbell soup plant in New Jersey, they watched lines processing more tomatoes in a single day than many German factories could handle in a month. Women and elderly men operated machines that replaced entire teams of German workers. Conveyor belts, steam cookers, and automatic fillers moved endlessly, supervised by a single operator sipping coffee and listening to the radio. In Detroit, unloading coal at a power plant revealed the conversion of the automotive industry to wartime production. The River Rouge complex employed 100,000 workers, producing jeeps, aircraft engines, and tanks. The plant consumed more electricity daily than all of Hamburg. Parking lots were full. Thousands of workers drove to work, often owning multiple cars. Franz Kellner, a POW, noted, "Even our officers rarely owned a car. Here, workers had two, one for work, one for the family. We thought they were mocking us." They weren't. Ideological collapse, the effect on prisoners. By winter 1943, the cumulative impact of these experiences had a name in American intelligence circles: ideological collapse syndrome. The U.S. Office of the Provost marshaled documented prisoners, requesting access to newspapers, books, and educational materials. No longer could even the most fanatical Nazis dispute reality. They still considered themselves loyal Germans, but they stopped talking about victory, and many openly questioned what they had been told about America. Camp newspapers, often written by prisoners themselves, began to reflect this change. Articles shifted from defiance to curiosity, exploring democracy, economics, and post-war reconstruction. Lieutenant Hermann Goetz, captured with the 10th Panzer Division, wrote, "We were told America was a weak, divided, mongrel nation. Every step of this journey proves it wrong." By late 1943, the German prisoners were no longer passive observers. Many were assigned to labor in American factories, farms, and municipal projects. The U.S. military carefully balanced labor assignments so prisoners could contribute without violating the Geneva Convention regarding direct war production. Yet, the experience offered them a front-row seat to American industrial might. In a textile mill outside Philadelphia, prisoners witnessed automated looms, producing yards of cloth at a speed that left them speechless. Machines operated in perfect rhythm, monitored by a handful of workers, most of whom were women or elderly men. Electric motors replaced dozens of laborers who would have been required in Germany. Stabsfeldwebel Ernst Wagner, a former German factory worker, wrote, "Every machine had its own power source. Every operation was optimized. We did in a single day what would have taken our best German factory a week. And the people, they worked with calm, without shouting, without fear. No overseers, no SS officers, just efficiency, agricultural superiority. Seeing abundance, prisoners who were assigned to farms witnessed. Mechanization on a scale impossible in Germany. One combine harvester in Nebraska replaced 100 manual laborers, and vast fields of wheat, corn, and cotton stretched as far as the eye could see." Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann noted, "We were told Americans were lazy, that they could not fight under pressure. Yet here, they harvested fields the size of our counties in days, using machines powered by electricity and gasoline. They treated their labor with pride, not fear. Rural electrification programs allowed even small farms to operate with modern conveniences. Tractors, water pumps, refrigeration, and lighting were commonplace. German soldiers could scarcely imagine such wealth and organization outside military headquarters." Herbert Lang, observing a cotton gin in Texas, recorded, "The gin processed in an hour what our entire village would need a month to handle." And the farmer himself, he is not a nobleman, not a party official, just an ordinary man. Yet he commands resources we could not dream of. Factories as education, witnessing production excellence. Prisoners also worked near or in American factories producing non-military goods, which freed American workers for wartime production. This allowed them to see industrial scale and automation firsthand. At the Campbell soup plant in New Jersey, they watched production lines processing hundreds of tons of tomatoes per day. Conveyor belts, automated can fillers, and large steam cookers handled production with a precision impossible in Germany. A single operator could manage machines that would have required 50 German workers. In Detroit, at the River Rouge complex, German prisoners saw 100,000 workers, producing vehicles, aircraft engines, and tanks. Electricity usage at the plant exceeded entire German cities. Parking lots filled with workers' cars stunned the Germans, as private automobile ownership had been a rare privilege in Germany. Oberleutnant Franz Kellner wrote, "Even officers rarely owned a car in Germany. Here, skilled workers had two, one for work, one for family. They spoke casually of replacing it next year with a newer model. We were stunned. Rural electrification and the American standard of living. The more prisoners traveled through America, the more they realized the scale of wealth and comfort. Houses in even small towns had electricity, running water, radios, and automobiles. Supermarkets were stocked with items that Germans would not have seen for years. In Nebraska, sugar beet fields were tended by machinery that harvested and cleaned crops far faster than human labor. Irrigation systems powered by electricity ensured maximum yields. Farmers discussed production in terms of bushels per acre, often double what German farms could achieve on their best land. Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann, observing the farm operations, noted, "The farmer's son, only 16, drives a tractor worth more than my father earned in his lifetime." And he laughs, saying it is not even a top model. Here, abundance is ordinary. Ideological collapse, the POW mindset. By mid-1944, American intelligence officers documented a profound change in German POWs. Exposure to American industry, agriculture, and technology led to what they called ideological collapse syndrome. Prisoners no longer argued when presented with statistical evidence of American production. Even fanatical Nazis began to question their propaganda. Many began requesting books, newspapers, and educational materials, showing curiosity about democracy, economics, and post-war reconstruction. Camp newspapers, often edited by anti-Nazi prisoners under American supervision, shifted tone from defiant nationalism to analytical discussion. Lieutenant Hermann Gutz, captured with the 10th Panzer Division, wrote in a censored letter, "We were told America was weak, a divided mongrel nation. Every step of this journey proves us wrong. Industry, agriculture, technology, and ordinary people. We have underestimated them. Factories, agriculture, and transportation. A nation in motion." The trains carrying prisoners from Virginia to Texas and Oklahoma passed factory towns, industrial complexes, and mechanized farms. The scale was overwhelming. Willow Run, Michigan. B-24 bombers assembled at an hourly pace, consuming electricity equal to entire German cities. Alcoa Aluminum, Tennessee. Electric furnaces producing metal for aircraft and weapons. Rubbertown, Kentucky. Massive synthetic rubber plants surpassing German production by over six-fold. Mississippi River, St. Louis. Grain elevators holding enough wheat to feed cities for months. Kansas City, stockyards. Thousands of cattle, meat processing, and casual abundance beyond imagination. Even casual displays of wealth. Workers drinking Coca-Cola, smoking, and commuting in private automobiles undermined the core Nazi narrative. The American military and administrative efficiency. Beyond industry and agriculture, prisoners observed the efficiency of American military administration. Identification, medical processing, and assignment were done with speed and accuracy. Hospitals within camps were better equipped than most German civilian facilities. Food distribution was generous, standardized, and consistent, creating psychological contrast with starvation experiences in North Africa. Otto Krebs, a former chef, recorded, "We were given surplus food, not because of mockery, but because it was normal. I wept, throwing away bread I had never seen before in such quantities." The psychological transformation. The cumulative impact of these experiences led to a profound mental shift among the prisoners. Realization of American capacity, machinery, electricity, and productivity far exceeded German standards. Disbelief in Nazi propaganda. Stories of a decadent, weak America were destroyed by reality. Ideological questioning. Many prisoners began to analyze, rather than blindly accept, the beliefs instilled in them since childhood. Desire for knowledge. Increased requests for books, newspapers, and educational programs reflected curiosity and self-education. Major Paul Noeland, part of the American monitoring team, reported in December 1944, "The prisoners no longer argue when presented with facts. They still hold loyalty to Germany, but have stopped speaking of victory. Many are openly questioning what they were told." By late 1944, German prisoners were fully immersed in the American system. Daily assignments took them through factories, farms, railways, and cities, allowing them to witness industrial and societal efficiency on a scale they had never imagined. At a Tennessee cotton gin, prisoners observed machinery capable of processing hundreds of bales per day, a task that would have taken German villagers a month. Electric power, generated from regional hydroelectric plants, ran every machine with precision. Unreitzia Herbert Lang wrote, "The farmers here are ordinary men. They do not command armies. Yet they control resources that make Germany's best operations look primitive. Tractors, trucks, electricity, all ordinary, all available." In Nebraska, POWs worked in sugar beet fields using mechanized harvesters. A single machine could replace over 100 men, and fields stretched for miles, beyond the size of entire German counties. Farmers casually discussed yields that were twice the best in Germany, emphasizing efficiency, resourcefulness, and planning. Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann observed, "The farmer's son, just 16, drove a tractor worth more than my father had earned in a lifetime. And he said, it was nothing special. His father was expecting a newer model next year." Factories as demonstrations of power. Prisoners also witnessed American industrial power firsthand. Factories operated with minimal staff, yet exceeded production levels achieved by entire German towns. At Campbell's Soup in New Jersey, automated systems processed hundreds of tons of tomatoes daily. Machines moved in perfect synchronization, with a single operator overseeing dozens of processes that would have required 50 German workers. In Detroit, at the River Rouge complex, prisoners observed 100,000 workers producing military vehicles, engines, and components. Electric consumption outpaced entire German cities, and the workforce commuted in their own automobiles, a display of wealth and independence that challenged all German preconceptions. Oberleutnant Franz Kellner wrote, "Even officers in Germany rarely owned a car. Here, skilled workers owned two. It was casual, normal, everyday life." Cultural shock and lifestyle observation. German POWs were struck not just by industry, but by American standard of living. Small towns had electricity, running water, radios, and full homes. Supermarkets overflowed with products, and casual abundance, Coca-Cola bottles, cigarettes, and cars, was everywhere. Hinrich Müller, an electrical engineer, calculated the energy usage in a single train yard. In 1 hour, they consumed more electricity than my entire Berlin district used in a day. Lights in empty buildings, fans running in vacant rooms. The waste was unimaginable. Every observation, every city, every factory became a lesson in the scale and organization of American life. Ideological collapse. By winter 1944, the cumulative experiences produced a profound psychological effect. Among prisoners, American intelligence termed it ideological collapse syndrome. Prisoners ceased arguing against reality. Even the most devoted Nazis began questioning propaganda. Requests for newspapers, books, and educational materials surged. Camp newspapers, once nationalistic, began covering democracy, economics, and post-war reconstruction. Lieutenant Hermann Gutz, captured with the 10th Panzer Division, wrote, "We were told America was weak and divided. Yet every step of our journey proves the opposite. The industry, the farms, the cities, the people, we have underestimated them completely." Reflection and realization. By the time the prisoners reached their final camps in Texas and Oklahoma, The transformation was nearly complete. The journey had taken them from desert defeat in North Africa to the realization that German propaganda was false, that American industrial and social capacity was unmatched, and that the war effort of the United States was unstoppable. Camps offered hot showers, electric lighting, and flush toilets. Hospitals had X-ray machines, penicillin, and surgical equipment unavailable in Germany. Kitchens produced daily meals beyond the reach of many German civilians. Otto Krebs, a former Munich chef, reflected, "We threw away more food in one day than my family had seen in 3 years. Not spoiled, just excess. This abundance, it was incomprehensible. The end of illusions. From the train windows to the factory floors, to the farmlands and river ports, German POWs witnessed the true power of American industry and society. By the end of 1944, Nazi propaganda was shattered in the minds of most prisoners. The myth of American weakness was replaced by awe and respect. Many began thinking critically, questioning previous beliefs, and understanding the scale of the Allied war effort. In the words of Major Paul Noland, documenting the change, the prisoners no longer argue. They still feel loyalty to Germany, but they speak no longer of victory. They are quiet, reflective, and increasingly curious about the world beyond Nazi lies. The journey from propaganda, war, and defeat to revelation and ideological transformation would remain one of the most profound examples in military history of psychological dismantling achieved without combat, through exposure to abundance, efficiency, and human dignity.